The birthday girl is here. Thank you, everyone, for your birthday wishes, messages. I've not even been able to go through them, but I promise I'll reply all of them. Thank you for today. Thank you for your messages and prayers. I appreciate it all. Tonight, there's two things I just want to do, and it's very brief. I have a word. This morning when I wake up, I received a song, and throughout the day, I've just been singing it within. I feel that I should not share it, I should not enjoy it alone. My son that also need to hear the song. And it's simple, it says, my grace is sufficient for thee. God is saying that his grace is sufficient for me. I know that I have the message, but I want you to also share it. The word is saying that his grace is sufficient for thee. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9. It says, and he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. That's all. God is saying to someone that enough of worrying, enough of running helter-skelter, enough of depending on human that cannot help you, enough of casting all your burdens on people, enough of thinking of what is not real, enough of the fear of the future. He's saying that his grace is sufficient for you. God's grace is sufficient for you. His grace is sufficient for me. There's someone that can carry all your burdens. There's someone who cares. There's someone who loves you more than your imagination. There's someone who can do all things for you. There's someone who is a father, is a friend, is a provider. Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nissi. There's someone who is capable of taking care of you. And he asked me to tell you that his grace is sufficient for you. It means you don't need to run helter-skelter. You don't need to be afraid of the future. You don't need to carry the burden yourself, because his grace is sufficient for thee. He said to me today, my grace is sufficient for thee. And there's a song I want to sing, an hymnal song. It's going to be a Yoruba song. Sorry for the non-Yoruba speakers. But the summary is that his grace is sufficient for me. And I so much love that song. So you have to join me. I'm singing a Yoruba hymn. Hymn 831. It says his grace is sufficient for me. Àwọn tó gbẹ́kẹ̀lé Olúwa yóò borí ìgbìdánwò, nítorí ìlérí yìí dájú. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ mi tó fún wọn. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ mi tó fún wọn. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ mi tó fún wọn. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ tí kò lẹ́gbẹ́. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ mi tó fún wọn. That song is saying that my grace is sufficient for thee, dear child. My grace is sufficient for thee. Why worry? Why are you afraid? Why are you bitter? Why are you scared of the future? He's telling you tonight that his grace is sufficient for thee. Though that message is mine because I'm the birthday girl, but I also want you to pass it across to you to tell you that his grace is sufficient for you. And there's a way I love to sing this song because it gives me peace of mind that whatever I'm passing through, when the whole world deserted me because it's normal as a disciple of Christ, when I have no one to turn to, no one to talk to, not like before, when I look back and there's no family, there's no friends, I remember that he always tells me that his grace is sufficient for it. Means he is sufficient, him alone. I don't need to worry. I don't need to seek help from elsewhere. God's grace is sufficient. I'm going to sing that song the way I love to sing it. He said, let me sing another verse. Manala toruni hejen fún àwọn èrò mímọ́ lọ́nà, tẹ̀rù pa tó sì wá ìsinmi. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ mi tó fún ọ. Look at the chorus. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ rẹ tó fún mi. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ rẹ tó fún mi. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ tí kò lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ rẹ tó fún mi. His grace is sufficient for me. What about you? His grace is sufficient for thee. The first one says, those that trust in the Lord will endure their temptations. Because his promises is sure, his grace is sufficient for thee. Yes. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ rẹ tó fún mi. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ rẹ tó fún mi. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ tí kò lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́. Oore ọ̀fẹ́ rẹ tó fún mi. Are you afraid of moving ahead? Are you afraid of letting go of the past and look ahead to the future? Are you afraid of even letting go of the world and sin because you believe that Christianity has nothing to offer? You believe that Christ has nothing to offer? Are you afraid of leaving the old world? Don't forget the cost of being a disciple. Everyone might forsake you, but his word is telling me to tell you now that his grace is sufficient for thee. God's grace is sufficient for me. He has been faithful, and the future is still far and far. And he sent his word to me as I start a new year, and which I'm grateful for, that his grace is sufficient for me. When grace speaks, no protocol can hinder it. When grace speaks, protocol will be scattered. When grace speaks, God speaks. And when he says his grace is sufficient for me, what other burden which is could I reach for? Is perfect, because it is grace we need at this journey. It's not for him that run it. It's not for he that can work hard, but God that shows mercy. And when mercy speaks, when grace speaks, protocol will bend. When grace speaks, people will obey. When grace speaks, honor will follow. His grace is sufficient for thee. Don't forget, that's my word for you tonight, that God's grace is sufficient for thee. Worry less. Focus on him. He's able to take care. He's capable. You can trust on him. He's a friend that you can rely on, because he never fails. Don't doubt, because the Bible says he that must come to him, he that must request, must believe that he is a rewarder of them diligently seeking. If you doubt, then you have lost it. But if you choose to follow him and you hold on to him and him alone, he says I should tell you that his grace is sufficient for thee. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for all the messages and birthday wishes. I'll go through them one after the other. But tonight, I want you to know that God's grace is sufficient for thee. Don't forget, his grace is more than sufficient. It's enough. It's all that you need. Everything that you need is in him. It's enough. It's sufficient. His grace is sufficient for thee. Don't forget when we read 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. It says, for my grace, let me read it again for you. It says, my grace, and he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. God's grace is sufficient for me. What about you? See you next time. God bless you. Good night.